Hello. I think that we can start with our next round of talks and small events here on the festival. Some people are still coming, but I think it's okay. Okay, my name is Vladimir Djurdjevic. I will be the host and moderator of next two small events here. The first one is Impulse Talks. We're going to have 3 of them. And then we're going to have a round table with people who are working on both sides, on the climate data supply side, but also on the side of climate data users. So I will call our first speaker, Goran Pejanovic from Climateurope of Serbia, to give us a presentation.
Good morning, everyone. I'm coming from Hydromet of Serbia and from Southeast European Virtual Climate Change Center. I will try to be very fast because this is kind of bureaucratic point of view. Our Hydromet service is established in 1887, and National Center for Climate Change and Southeast Europe Virtual Climate Change Center start to work in 2009 operationally. The main jobs of these centers are monitoring, research, forecasting of climate impact assessment, climate change risk assessment, vulnerability of different areas and sectors of economy, as well as the capacity for their adaptation to change climate conditions, implementation on training programs and public information. Considering that we are in bigger and bigger problem in 2008, we reconstructed our institute, and especially because of the rising number of extreme events, we formed the so-called meteorological and hydrological forecasting and warning system. In that sector, we joined the hydrological and meteorological people in order to react in some emergency events due to weather and other stormy weathers. Then the classical meteorological observing system continued to work, hydrological one, and the National Climate Center, National Climate Change Center, I mentioned, is host for the South European Virtual Climate Center. We are in that one connecting with the people from the university, mainly from the Belgrade, and try to combat with the climate change issues. Here we have our observing network, and the main novelty is we added the second upper air station in Nice and in Ish, and continue to add the automatic weather station. Nowadays we have 30 of them, and those are suited on the place where we have synoptic program already established in 30, let's say around the 30 places in the Serbia. Let's say Serbia is around 100 square kilometers. 5 latitude multiply 4 longitude degrees. We are 500 kilometers far from the Mediterranean Sea, 1,500 kilometers from the Adriatic Sea. And all kind of models we are applying in our forecasting system, starting for borrowing, let's say, ECMWF forecast, and continue with our 2 Doppler radars are working in Serbia, one in the north, one in the south, and additional 20 to support the higher protection division. And this is very known how it works, this early warning system, that we created the warning degrees for non-serious event, potentially serious, serious event, and the extreme events. And short-range forecast is due to prepare people in the kind of some unpleasant, upcoming unpleasant events. In parallel, we need to set the better, let's say, better resisted system in all Serbia on the level of municipalities. And there is one program done together with the Minister of Interior to create risk assessment to some meteorological and hydrological events like extreme precipitation, hail, strong wind, snowstorm, snow drift, icing, and offshore heat wave, cold wave, and drought. Serbia is exposed to climate change times, and in many of those events happened in last, let's say 20 years. I will withdraw the extreme snow cold wave in February, which came pretty after the, let's say, not too good forecast. We were not be prepared for this situation. Wave lasted for 30 days, 30 people died because of this, and we declared the emergency situation in all country. Believe that the economic loss in this summer was 300 million euros. But what's, let's say, happened in April when I was in Ankara, we had some meeting about the flash flood guidance system, and people from the West Balkan was, let's say, somehow delightful with this snowing. More than 1 meter happened in the February this year. And they said, I remember this, that we will have the water for next few years because of these things. But in summer that year, catastrophic droughts happened in West Balkan, also in Serbia. This is the most dangerous one, and it cost us more than 2 billion euros. That is why the knowledge is very important in this topic of climate change. People, I wish to say, used to some past climate and pretty not prepared for the let's say next season. Also in 2014, this flood in Bosnia, Croatia, and Serbia happens in May, and characteristic of this flood is the deep cyclone lasting for 3 or 4 days, and it is not followed, that one was not followed with the, let's say, convection processes. In our center, we try to support different sectors, such as the agriculture, health, water sector, and disaster risk reduction sectors. And I mentioned the drought is probably the most heavy problem in our country. In period 51-80, we expected in 6 years, one drought, but after that, our data showed us that expectation of the drought is much reduced every 3rd year. We can see this. But this is the estimation by the parameters of precipitation, based on precipitation, and called standard precipitation index. We're trying to invoke other, let's say, remote sensing data by the satellite, Meteosat and land SAF product you can follow in the bottom place. This is the fraction vegetation cover. And the really question, what about for the soil moisture and for the vegetation moisture? Can we expect the better products from the, let's say, ESA Sentinel-based measurements, and how do we share this data? I think that Copernicus system, Copernicus Climate Service can help us in this area. This is how we monitor and the forecast. Sometimes forecast, seasonal forecast is successful, but sometimes not. And this is about the ECMWF. We are under the so-called seamless forecast approach, which is established by the World Meteorological Organization. We use the seasonal, monthly, medium range, short range forecast, and in some cases very short forecast up to 4 hours. For example, this is the left example, showed us the hydrological forecast using the ECMWF short range forecast for the precipitation. And again, this graph ought to show us about this uncertainty in the soil moisture conditions at the beginning of this case. In WMO system, two regional climate centers network are established. The second one is for Europe, and it is decided the 3 nodes will take care about the climate data, climate monitoring, and long-range forecast. They are suited in the Netherlands, Deutsche Wetterdienst Germany, and Meteo France and Roshid-Met. For the long-range forecast, our highly recommended functions, that means this is more concerning to our developing system, is to build a tool to satisfy our needs for the climatological purposes. This is the NCEP-NMMB model developed by Professor Academic Zavisha Janjic, which can work on both global, regional, very local scale, and to support also hydrostatic and non-hydrostatic regime in order to make tool for the climate purposes. We are adding the, let's say, mineral aerosol in the model, aerosol, then the connected coupling with the ocean model, and continental land hydrology models. And concerning the climate change scenarios, I think it will be said more than we do now. The main and the last point is the run of NMMB regional climate model on 14, 8, and 8 kilometers, and under the Mediterranean Climate Change Center in Bologna, we are using their initial condition and applying the IPCC scenario RCP8.5. 8-kilometer resolution is very detailed, let's say. Why we need to this? To avoid applying the so-called bias correction system. This is the example how it is done with the precipitation. You know, in this modeling system, your precipitation are, let's say, half of those which happened in the reality. And another one, we continue in agriculture, forestry, hydrology, and use the classical climatological indices for this kind of the job. Also participant in SICOF and METCOF regional climate outlook forums with the main goal to monitor and to give the forecast for the upcoming season. And the last thing that we happened in our area it was performing the operational weather prediction consortium for the Southeast Europe, and all these West Balkan countries are inside. And thank you for attention.
Okay, thank you. We're going to have time for questions during the roundtable discussion because the Goran will also participate in that activity. I think this was a classical presentation from user supply side because you see a lot of graphs, the numbers and things like that. But I think that now we're going to see a little bit how it looks like to be within the climate services business from the user side, from the people who work and try to use the climate data to improve their activities. Okay, just to find this one. Our next speaker is Carmen Arguello from FAO, the regional office in Budapest. So please take the floor.
Okay, I have a very brief presentation and I'm going to try to be very quick. I'm going to start with a question for you. How many of you have heard of the concept e-agriculture? Raise your hand. Okay, we have a couple of them. So e-agriculture describes an emerging field which focuses on enhancement of agricultural and rural development through improved information and communication processes and services. So we're talking about conceptualization, design, development, evaluation, and application of innovative ways to make information available to the users. And here we're referring to e-agriculture, but actually it's a broader concept which includes agriculture, of course, forestry, land use, and fisheries, which is the broader sector that we work from FAO. So FAO has identified what are the potential roles of information and communication technologies in agriculture, meaning the broader sector. And we have identified some of the spectrums of the potential role of the ICTs in this sector. So including agricultural innovation systems, sustainable farming, disaster risk management, and early warning system, which is related to the presentation that the representative from Serbia just delivered. But also ICTs can have a role in enhancing market access, in identifying financial services and insurances. So making this link that was referred to in the opening session, making this link between the users and the financiers, the people with the money, with the people who needs the money to make changes in agriculture. And of course, this happens through regulatory frameworks, through capacity development and empowerment of the smallholders and so on. In the regional office of FAO, which is based in Budapest, we work through three main regional initiatives. The first one is empowering smallholders and family farms for improved rural livelihoods and poverty reduction. The second regional initiative is improving agri-food trade and market integration, and the third one is sustainable natural resource management under a changing climate. Of course, while we work with ICTs and provide information to the users in the three regional initiatives, the one that is more related to climate services is Regional Initiative 3. There we're working to support countries to access climate finance, to improve the livelihood of people in rural areas. So we have identified in the first scenario that most of the countries have limited data. There's a very limited knowledge on climate change impacts and needs. There's need for capacity development and policies also development. And we're working with the countries to enhance the sustainable use of natural resources, disaster risk reduction, and access to climate finance. What we want to do is to reach 2030, the year when the SDGs should be achieved. We want to reach that year with a different scenario where all the policies are in place in the agricultural sector for sustainable natural resource management, for climate adaptation and mitigation, and where countries have access to information that can make a difference in the decision-making processes to access to climate finance. So more concretely on what we're doing, FAO, with the support of other partners, has put together the Open Forest, which is a place where all the different tools and informations that FAO is developing is available to access from different users. We have different tools to collect the data, but also to calculate and to make more user-friendly the information that is sometimes unreachable or not understandable at all. Some of the tools that we have and that are available for the governments, for research institutes, for NGOs, and for the users, the final users, the smallholders and farmers, is forest inventories, climate change reporting, socioeconomic surveys, biodiversity assessments, land use and land use change and forestry measurements, deforestation and monitoring with remote sensing, and detecting desertification and in the outside of forests. So what is important about this platform is that some of the tools are actually updated and uploaded by the users themselves. So this is a tool that, based on the observation in the field, the users can be updating on a constant way, and then this information will be available to neighboring communities, neighboring countries, and this information can be not only useful for scientists, but also for the people with the money and willing to finance these different projects and measures that the countries and the communities want to put in place. So this is the presentation that I have, and we will have more time to speak during the next session. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Carmen. Our next speaker coming from finance or banking, and probably you all know that this year the Nobel Prize for the economy goes to the guys who developed the model which think about the climate change in the future, economy and financing. One of them, the Norhaus, developed this DICE model for seeing how our investment policy will look out in terms of our emissions in the future. So that's the reason why the finance and economy is also important for the climate and whole this story. So I will call Anna Bachurova from EBRD to give us next presentation. Please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anna Bachurova. I work in the regional or in the resident office of EBRD here in Belgrade. I am part of the energy efficiency and climate change team, which is the one driving the green investment of the bank, including the ones on climate resilience. So in order to build climate resilience in businesses, in infrastructure, in the economies in the countries where we operate, the EBRD integrates systematically climate risk assessments in order to understand what are the best climate resilience measures to be integrated in the projects where this is needed. And so today I'm going to present a snapshot of our activities in this area, both in terms of financing and technical assistance. Now, in 2015, we adopted our so-called GET approach, or Green Economy Transition approach, which is, in a way, our internal strategy to move forward and increase the business volume dedicated to green projects. And here I just brought in a list of what we count as green projects, and obviously climate resilience is one part of that. We have set ourselves a target to achieve 40% of GET or green financing in the total business volume by 2020. And so far we're on the right way, on the right path at least. These are just a few numbers to give you the context in which we currently find ourselves when it comes to green financing, with the idea or vision to be at 40%, hopefully even more, by 2020. We also monitor carefully or evaluate the environmental impacts of our investment. So I brought in a couple of figures to show energy savings or water savings achieved through implementation of our project. This is the picture of all countries of operation, and I also got an excerpt for Southeast Europe, which covers the Western Balkans, Bulgaria and Romania. And the main message is that we're on the same trend, going upward. The last column is the year has not ended yet, that's why it hasn't reached the height that we're looking forward. Now, specifically zooming into the GET adaptation finance commitments. This is a snapshot since 2011, when we started accounting for GET or for green climate adaptation finance more specifically. We have about 1.5 billion investments in projects or project components that actually support the 5.6 billion worth of projects to become more climate resilient. In terms of sectors, it should come probably as no surprise: infrastructure, municipal, environmental, transport, power infrastructure carries the bulk of our climate resilient investments, almost 90%. And region-wise, it's actually the Southeast Europe region that has so far gotten the most of our climate resilient investments. This information is also available in a few brochures that I brought in, so you can take a look later when you have time for coffee and so. You also see some more case studies in addition to infrastructure where we invest in climate resilience. But the focus of today's presentation is to look at how climate services help us make hydropower operations more climate resilient. To set the scene, I mean, for this kind of audience, I guess it's needless to say that hydropower operators are increasingly looking how to assess the climate impacts, potential climate impacts on their operations, considering the effects on power generation, reservoir management, dam safety, in the view of changing precipitation patterns or more and more sudden extreme risk weather events. How do we propose, or how do we approach? We look at the three main steps, and hopefully you will see the relevance of climate information services throughout the three steps. So this is first looking at the vulnerability, looking at the potential impact, and finally looking at the actual climate resilient measures that can address to minimize or even reduce or even eliminate the climate vulnerability. So when we talk about vulnerability, we want to look at the risks. They can be either acute or, what was the word? Chronic. These generally, there is a long list of potential risks, but when you look at your hydropower asset or a specific project, it is where you have to make and assess the vulnerability in a context-specific way. For that, you need a robust evidence base. You need analysis of national plans. You need to go back and see how it was before and start to get a sense to understand what are the changes that you already see or are potential going forward. Once you assess the vulnerability, the next step is to look at the potential impact. And while this can already give you a more specific prioritization of the potential risks that are relevant for the single hydropower project or any other infrastructure project, you still wouldn't know exactly what is the potential impact, and this is due to the many uncertainties related to climate change risks. That is why, in this case, the uncertainties should be explored carefully through climate change modeling systems, and more importantly, even so, such uncertainties should be communicated to the decision makers and translated in the language that the decision makers, be it hydropower operators or reservoir management managers, should be able to understand. Now, last but not least, once you have more or less an idea, almost full picture of the current situation, it's time to take a decision on whether you should look at structural or non-structural measures to address climate resilience, or maybe a combination of both. Obviously, in the non-structural measures, you can see a lot of issues related to available and reliable climate information services. So throughout the 3 steps, which you hopefully can see from the back there, you see the very, very high relevance and importance to use and assess and translate the hydrological data into the operations of your asset. Now, the example I'm going to mention comes from Albania. Our client there is the state power utility Cash. Recently, we made a 218 million investment in its operation and modernization, and part of this investment includes an element of capacity building for climate risk management. The targeted technical assistance program tries to enable or improve the ability of Cash staff to access, to use hydrometeorological data in their everyday decision-making process for power generation and for flood risk management and for reservoir management across the basin. Now, more specifically, this is probably the most interesting part. I hope I'm doing well on time. When we visited Cash and the scoping mission, they explicitly said that they need a tool for hydrological data processing. So this is what we try to give them. It's a web-based software program for river basin modeling. And it started, it has been implemented gradually between November last year and May this year, and Cash is now fully using this program into their day-to-day river modeling and hydropower management operations. It started as a pilot. Yes, the system may also be simplified in its current state, but it allows to download available data. It allows for the users to enter observed data. It allows the users to model and to simulate for short-term or for long-term availability of the river flow, the precipitation. So all that together has given Cash a near real-time information tool, which they use both in the day-to-day operation, but also has become a critical input in their climate risk management plan, which is now in the drafting process and includes consideration of different structural and non-structural measures, already considering different scenarios of how this climate modeling will impact the flows and the precipitation patterns. How this looks in reality, just a few pictures of the application, of the interface where the data can be entered and the information is shown, the precipitation maps using both or showing both observed data and short-term forecasts, and simulation tools for short and long-term hydrological simulations, forecasting. So I will stop here. I also brought you a case study from Tajikistan, where the similar use of climate information services is described in more detail for a hydropower project rehabilitation that we did in Tajikistan, and I remain here for questions later on in the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to start now round table. Just minutes or two we're going to spend to set up the stage, so don't go from your seats. Okay. I will just ask guys to bring us the microphones and maybe to move this. Okay. Also, the all people participate in the table, you can come now to the stage. And take a seat, please. Možemo da isključimo u stvari sve. Sedi ovdje slobodno. Ja ću ovdje stojim. Stojeći je. Okay, I'll just have 1 or 2 minutes to show you something, because we're talking about the climate services, and probably you heard about the climate services in agriculture, in forestry, in water resources. But there is also climate services in clothing industry, and I will present you one. This is the temperature in the Belgrade from 19th century. So the blue one is the anomaly of the temperature in the end of the 19th century, and on the down you can see how the temperature increased during the 20th century. So right now we are here. But on the other side, due to the climate change, we have a so hot October here, so I'm not able to use this one during the festival, maybe in January. But at least the one is made by a colleague from Climate Services. So if you met her here, you can ask you to give you a scheme how to do this. Because if you have long time series of the temperature, you can do the same one. Or even the blanket. I saw the people doing the blanket like this. Okay. So we have a panel here. I will stay in this position. So we have a Goran who was already been presenter. Then we have a Svetlana from Latvia. Okay. Then we have a Anna from EBRD. Then we have a Carmen from FAO. We have Nadica from reinsurance company Europa Re. And finally we have a Dorotea from Slovenia, coming from Ministry of Science. So who has a microphone right now? Okay, we can start with the Svetlana coming from Climate Service in Latvia. And maybe she can tell us, she just told me on the beginning of this meeting here that they also have experience in the business, how they use the information they produce as a climate service. They produce a lot of information on a free basis, but they also have some kind of experience how they make a business or make some kind of economic activity using that information data. So please.
Okay, hello everyone. So my name is Svetlana and I represent Latvian Environment, Geology and Metrology Center. So pretty long name, and as you can understand from the name, we are state meteorological service, but also we are working on other tasks, geology, environment, etc. And we are state limited liability company, therefore it means that we are only partly funded by government, and also we have to have some commercial tasks. Just briefly about state tasks. So, for example, these tasks change every year, and mainly it's climate change analysis or providing information to state policy or state police or state fire and rescue services, statistical bureaus, etc. While on the commercial basis, we are mainly trying to provide some products that are aimed to create some products adapted to the various sectors' needs, for example, energy sectors or agriculture sectors. For example, last year we had a lot of precipitation, therefore we had a lot of floods. This year it's a very dry year, we had droughts, therefore agriculture and insurance sector are very active right now. And as I already said, that we are trying to create some products that are adapted to the client's needs. But mainly we think that just using only climate information, it would be just only just estimation and not always precise. So all the time when we have clients, we are always asking to provide some information, any statistics, any data that client have in order to create some products that are specifically created for the client, just some changes, some optimizations specifically for clients. For example, we receive some information from energy sectors, from, for example, production of wind turbines, so we can modify our product. But unfortunately, we also face some problems. For example, we are a pretty small state organization, therefore we only few climatologists, therefore we are sometimes limited in time, yet we are trying to do our best. So briefly about what we are doing.
Okay, thank you. Maybe one question from my side, just if it is not some kind of policy of your institute, in terms of percents, the budget of in your institute, how much percent of your budget coming from these activities related to the providing some services? I mean, it can be a tricky question. If you don't know number or if you don't want to share that number, it's okay, but just curious about the percentages, like a 10%, 20, 30 or something like that.
Well, thank you for the question. It depends on the sector. For example, in climate, I would say it would be like 50 and 50%. For example, in forecast, it would be the other percentage, the other share, because there's a big more interest regarding forecast than regarding climate information in our country. So it depends on the sector.
Okay, thanks so much. Also, all of you are free to raise a question, so to interact with us. The main point of this time round table is to be interactive. So please, every one of you, if you have a question, just interrupt us and we're going to take that one. Maybe right now. No? Okay, thank you. Maybe later. We can move to Anna. Okay, we had the presentations from Anna, but also, I would like to ask you to tell us about maybe some other real-life experience, how you integrate the data in your operations, your programs, your decisions, and things like that. You mentioned something about the Bosnia, I think.
Bosnia and in general, when we have a project where we see that is in a region, in a location that is that could be affected by climate change, we discuss with the client, be it a corporate client or a utility or a financial institution. We discuss how to make a climate risk assessment in order to understand specifically what are the risks, what are the potential implications for the business, long-term, short-term. And then when we design the project, we take these assessments into account and we ensure that we build the relevant or the most relevant climate resilience measures, which, as I mentioned, could be either structural, really designing or modifying the design of an existing infrastructure. They can be also non-structural when we help a client make a climate risk management plan. I mentioned Bosnia because it's from the region, okay, and because it's a well-known climate adaptation and climate resilience project by EBRD, where we following the floods in 2014, 2012, we looked not just how to repair the road sections that were broken down due to the intense flooding, but we also specifically looked what kind of climate resilience additional measures should be taken into account and should be implemented so as to avoid similar damage when the next flood wave comes in. And so this is a good example of how the technical assistance and capacity building elements really complemented a financial investment. Similarly, we looked at climate resilience in another hydropower project in Tajikistan, but I haven't been really working in that region, so I will let the brochure speak for the project. It's there on the table. So I think the key is to work together with the client so that the client can say what are their concerns, and we, with the experts either from in-house or external experts, can also help the client find what is the best solution in this context of climate change impact, uncertainties, and so on.
Okay, thank you. Please.
I have a question for Anna. Actually, I'm interested in how in practice works your part of the work. Are you announcing calls for proposals, or you have a direct communication with a country or organization in the region or elsewhere, or both? I mean, I'm not aware how in practice looks like opening a new project with EBRD.
So very briefly, for example, in the case of cash in Albania, we make the concept of the investment, what needs to be done, and we also look into the technical assistance components, for which then, once we agree on terms of reference with the client, there is a public call for consulting companies based on the types of services that are needed for the client. We have a public call according to EBRD procurement rules, and we usually rely on donor funding for technical assistance, starting from feasibility studies, climate risk assessments, due diligence. So we have a package of technical assistance programs, and the consulting company which helps us in this case is selected with the general procurement, EBRD procurement
But
rules.
what was the first step? The country or organization come to you, or the other way in this particular case?
For cash, I wasn't part of the team that originated the deal, but I think it depends in which country we're talking about. In some countries, we've been there since 1991, and they know us, so there is a very, easy relationship between clients, EBRD. We know each other, and either party could approach the other one to originate an investment. In other countries, we're newer, like in the Summit region, we started operation a few years ago. So I assume we have a bit more business development to do there on our side.
Okay. I didn't say my name. Slobodan Ničković from HIDEMET Service of Serbia.
Nice to meet you.
There is no questions? No? Okay. So we can move to Carmen. Okay, Carmen, my impression was that FAO is something between providers and users. Sometimes you are providers, sometimes you are users of the data, and probably you have good insight where is the bottlenecks of flowing of information, because you're, as I said, in between. Can you also give your general experience about climate services, but also maybe something about finding that bottlenecks and how you deal with that?
Yeah. So I think that the bottlenecks or the gaps are in translating, as it was said before, translating the information so that it can be understandable for everyone, not only for scientists, but it gets to the people with the money. And I will give you an example based on the work that we're doing with both the GCF and the GEF. The GCF is the Green Climate Fund, and the GEF is the Global Environmental Facility. So FAO in this region is investing a lot of resources and efforts to put together a strong portfolio for the GCF. To tell you, the GCF is the biggest climate-dedicated fund under the convention. And Eastern Europe and Central Asia only account for 4% of the overall portfolio of the fund. So there is a lot of work to be done so that countries can access these resources. There's like $10 billion so far in the initial capitalization, and there will be more resources. So what we're doing is trying to use these tools, and I will refer specifically to the Earth map. This tool is it's in partnership with Google, and we developed this tool, which works pretty much like Google Earth, but it has different layers, and you can, with the support of these layers, you can identify the areas where your project should be taking place. For example, we're developing one proposal in Armenia, and we crossed the information from the Earth map, and we put the layer of poverty, so the municipalities that are that have like highest percentages of poverty. We crossed the layer of climate impacts, so what are the municipalities that are being more impacted by droughts or floods or so on, and other layers that guided us to the concrete areas where we will implement the project. These also help to identify what is the additionality to climate impacts. So you will have a development project, but with the impacts of climate change, the cost of this investment will be higher. So you can identify also what is that additionality, and you can bring other donors or other financiers to the investment. I think that these type of tools are being like very, very useful to make very concrete investments that are most needed in developing countries, and also to identify what are the partnerships, the most adequate partnerships for that type of investment. Something that we were also discussing is that all of us are doing something most of the times in parallel, so identifying who can work with you, who can join these type of projects is also a very efficient way to work together.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Okay, one here. Okay, we have two. Just one.
Thank you. My name is Antonio Grassa. I am a research director from a private company producing wine. I'm directing this question both to Carmen and Anna because they should have different perspectives, and I would like to understand. When you talk about resilience and when you talk about managing resilience when defining an investment or a financing for an investment, up to what level do you need your climate information to be certain? What I mean is, what is your reliability threshold to use climate information assessing the resilience for a given investment?
That is a difficult question. I think that, of course, the highest level of reliability is, of course, desired, and I think that we're developing really good technologies, and that's another part of the work that we're doing, is working with the climate funds to support the development of these technologies that can be more reliable as we go. But of course, that there is some uncertainty. Climate change, as described in the convention, is uncertain. You know, of course, we are feeling or we're experiencing the impacts of climate change as we are continuing to work on the topic. But there's no 100% certainty on the topic. But I guess that's another part of the work that we need to do to continue to model and to work with the technology developers to have not 100%, but closer to 100% certainty when we talk about resilience.
Maybe it will become better, easier to answer if I ask it in this way. Do you modulate your level of financing in function of the reliability of the information you have?
Yes, but as you know, FAO is not a finance provider, but rather we work with the finance providers to do that. But yes, we do modulate.
And from our perspective, I mean, climate risk is one of many risks. We look into the political risk, macroeconomic risk, client's own financial risk. So climate risk is one among others. Of course, the higher reliability of the available information to address and assess any of these risks, the better. So in this case, in the case of the Tajikistan hydropower project, we work with the client and developed scenarios. So both the bankers, the technical consultants, the client, we're looking at the scenarios. Yes, we know each scenario has a certain degree of uncertainty, but then the decision making is made for the measures, structural and non-structural measures, is made on the best available information. I guess the different scenarios looked at different climate risks, looked at different measures. Each measure cost differently. So in a way, yes, you're looking into the, you're modulating, but it's, I think it's difficult to answer straightforward with yes or no. It's rather look at the picture holistically and best guess.
Yes, for Carmen. My name is Maria Navarro. I work for a weather consultancy company in Spain. I find the platform Open Forest that you explained before very interesting, and I'm curious that the tools that you have in this platform are open for everybody who wants to access, or only for the farmers?
Yeah, most of the tools there are open to everybody. Some of the tools that are feed by the users are pilots in certain countries, in certain communities, but the rest of the information is open to everyone who wants to use it. For the Google Earth, I understand that there is some registration that you need to do, but you could be it could be available for everyone. Right now there is a stage where we're trying to update the different information that is contained in the layers. So I think in the couple next months will be available.
And so I understand it's not focused on specific regions, but there are several regions you work with.
Yeah, it's global. It's global.
Global.
Yeah. Right. It's global, including some information on Eastern Europe and Central Asia. Yeah.
And I'm curious, the feedback from the users that I understand are farmers, is it easy to obtain?
I wouldn't say easy, but but it's working really well. I know the experience in Vietnam. They're doing a great job in putting together all the information from the observation in these communities, and it has worked really well. And the information is being shared with other communities nearby, and that has shown an added value in the exchanges and you know, learning that they have the same impacts, they could benefit from the same solutions and so on. So it's not, in my country we say it's not about discovering the boiling water, you know, there is already boiling water, there is already solutions in different countries, and learning from the other it's something that we need to also foster and facilitate.
Hello, Adrian Perels is my name, from the Finnish Meteorological Institute, coordinating the EU MAX project. Sort of building on the previous questions, my question is, to what extent are you building in learning processes in your products? because was this discussion about uncertainty. One point may be that even though, of course, the nicest would be if you have very precise products, perhaps a part of the users is not even able to use very high sophisticated products. So you may want to graduate your products also depending on the skills and the capabilities of the user, but then assess it in terms of how this graduation affects the usability, etc. So my question is, to what extent have you specific, explicit learning processes to improve your products over time?
I think that...
I'm sorry, also, well, please answer yes, but if some of the others want to answer, I'd like to hear them as well. Thank you.
So I think that these learning processes that you're referring to are in the core business of FAO. We're doing that with smallholders through Regional Initiative 1, but we're also doing that and fostering like large stakeholder engagement under Regional Initiative 3. And particularly, I will say that the support of the Green Climate Fund and the Global Environmental Facility has been instrumental to do that. I don't know if you're aware, but the GCF has a readiness and preparatory support program, which looks exactly at opening a little bit the scope of the work on climate change, not only to government institutions, but to academia, to rural communities, to other type of stakeholders that are linked and that are impacted by climate change, but usually don't have the access to the decision-making processes. So through the support of the Green Climate Fund, we're doing that in the Kyrgyz Republic, in Macedonia. We're going to start also working on that here in Serbia and in other countries. So I think that is, together with the technical assistance that we're providing with in-house capacities, the part of bringing the information, but also teaching the people how to actually use this information is very important and is part of the work that we're doing. Do you want to?
Okay. I will give a shorter break for Carmen for now, so we can back to her after our next guest, Nadica from Europa RE. We all know that insurance and reinsurance can be seen as one of adaptation measure to the climate change. So if we extend the area which is covered with insurance policy, we can hope that not all that area will gonna be hit by some big drought. Like we hope that we're not gonna have a drought from Poland to Greece and from Germany to Russia. So she's in that, let's say, business. On the other side, we know that people to buy insurance is something which is linked to the local culture, and she has some experience about that, how the situation about the insurance and reinsurance in the region is right now, and the thinking to reducing the risk due to the climate change.
Yeah. Thank you, Vladimir. So my name is Nadica Jovanovska, Boshkovska. I am a head of the representative office of Europa RE in Macedonia. What we do, actually, we are a Swiss-based property reinsurance company, but it's not that we are only commercial. We are quite specific because we are established mainly through threshold funds from the World Bank, GF, SECO, and also initial working capital for the company came from the countries from the region, Albania, Macedonia, and Serbia. So we started as a project around 2008-09, initiated by the World Bank, CRIF project, like Southeast European Catastrophic Risk Facility. And the idea was to actually impact of increasement of the catastrophic risk or NatCat insurance in this region in Southeast Europe. Namely, we all agree that the climate is changing, that the economic losses are increasing, and unfortunately the gap between the economic losses and the insured losses it's very much increasing. So around 30% of the developed countries are insured, are insured, and the economic losses are huge. And when we speak about developing countries like the region, then only 2% have some kind of property insurance, or when we speak about agriculture, the numbers are really low. Therefore, this initiative was developed, and now we already operate as a reinsurance company. Mainly from this year, we also write business worldwide, but our development focus is on providing catastrophic reinsurance coverage for flood, earthquake, and agriculture risks. What we mean agriculture risk? We have developed area yield index insurance, which is covering actually it's all risk product, because it's covering all climatic and biological risk that might influence on drop of the yield. But unfortunately, even if our main focus is to increase the penetration, it goes quite hard. The awareness of our region, of the people in this region, businesses, agriculture, residents, in respect to the insurance, it's very low. So, the people do not believe that some financial protection might help them if earthquake happen, or if we have earthquake, or in respect to the flood. And the disappointing fact is that the farmers and the farm holdings are also not protecting their business. For example, in Macedonia, less than 5% of the farmers are insured. The numbers in Serbia and in Albania, and we also work in the agriculture sector with Kazakhstan, for example, are similar. What else we do? Because this is some kind of like a private-public partnership, so we work with the government closely, and we develop risk transfer models. I would like to emphasize that all our modeling and all our rates and are based on full modeling, which we did together with the Air Worldwide. So it's we know exactly based on the hazard map which areas are more prone, which are less, and based on that we developed the underwriting risk model that is shared with from one side commercially with the insurance sector. The insurance companies can offer our innovative products with zero risk, because they can 100% reinsure. And on the other side, we developed, we call it sovereign and sub-sovereign products for agriculture, flood, and earthquake with the governments and municipalities in this region. I would say that, for example, municipal coverage for agriculture risk is implemented, let's say, in Serbia, in Sremska Mitrovica. In my country, in Macedonia, we are now developing a so-called compensation program, which aims to protect the budget against agriculture risk or catastrophes that might drop the yield. And the idea is to protect the governmental budget, and in cases when they have to provide the post-disaster payments, it is like a financial instrument. We will pay them back 3 or 4 times. There are some triggers and criteria, but since we are still in the process of developing, I will not go further on that. So that's it, and one more thing that I want to mention, because I have presentation later, I will not focus more on this part. At the moment, we also raise the awareness through Cat Monitor. It's a web-based platform. It's available for all of you, which actually can educate the people to what extent they are exposed to flood and earthquake. So it's free of charge. You can all, Google it and check it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, question for this round? Oh, we have one.
My name is Jeanette Besseminner from the Dutch Meteorological Office. You said that farmers are not really interested in insuring against extreme events. Do you know whether that is because they don't see the risk, or whether it's too expensive to insure against it?
Maybe none of both, but so no. In respect to they don't see risk, they see risk. From one side, yes, maybe for certain crops, they think depends from crop to crop if the insurance coverage is expensive or not. But for certain crops, maybe it's expensive. But then we have the government here, especially now I'm talking about Macedonia, but I know in Serbia it's similar, that provides it's covering 60% of the premium. 60% of the premium of the policy. So actually, if we see that they're only paying 40% of the premium, it's not even expensive. But there is something else that I was also planning to emphasize is, during my presentation later today, that make them not interested to buy. It's the post-disaster payment provided by the government, which is also harmful for the insurance sector. So whenever an adverse weather event happens, then the government is doing the assessment, and in the last couple of years they even tried to provide post-disaster payment to up to 100%. So why someone to insure when, but it's good that there is a goodwill of the government at the moment that it's planning to stop this process because it's not sustainable, then it's harmful for the budget. And I believe that we'll develop this new sovereign model, and will protect the budget, protect the farmers, but in the same time will not have negative impact on the insurance sector. And in long run, what we are analyzing at the moment and trying to develop in Macedonia, together with the World Bank, it's national agriculture insurance pool. It will be like where all the insurance companies will be involved, but certain risk will be taken by the government. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have one more.
Dragan, I'm from Barcelona Supercomputing Center. Is there some way to more stimulate farmers in Macedonia to insure than to stop providing this support from the government in the case of extreme events? Because I know in the past there were a few extreme events in the past few years, and actually not all farmers managed to get any support from the government. So is the way forward just to stop this support, or there could be some more motivating way of finding a middle ground to provide insurance for farmers at the moment while they still cannot insure themselves?
So I think the way how we will, let's say, motivate them is what we are analyzing. Actually, it's something that we will base on certain good examples of, let's say, Spain has Agroseguro, the similar pool, and Turkey has Tarsim and other as well. So what they do, they develop a standardized product. So because at the moment the insurance companies provide their own products, their own coverage, which is different based on the terms and conditions, based on the coverage period, and based on the price as well of the premium. But how to motivate them? We will motivate them if we. I don't know if it's motivation, but we are planning to link the insurance with the production subsidies, because what's happening at the moment, so if the farmer wants to get production subsidy, then he needs to protect the business, otherwise cannot get subsidies for the production and then get money as a post-disaster payment for the same crops, if I understood correctly the question.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we can move because we have a break after this, so maybe it's better to be a little bit faster now. We will move to Slovenia, to the Ministry of Science, and Dorothea will give us also their story about the climate services and how they find themselves in this business.
Hello everyone, my name is Dorothea Zlobec. I come from Slovenia, from Ministry for Education, Science and Sport. And our ministry is a partner in Sincere project that comes from strengthening international collaboration on climate change research. So we are mostly in this research part. This is a project that is supported by European Commission, and we have 22 different partners from all over Europe. And it starts this February, and mainly we have 3 different geographically areas that we are focused on. One is Africa, one is South America, and of course Europe. And concerning Europe, we need 3 different tasks to be addressed. One is that's what I'm really glad that I'm here, linking with banks and investment institutions. The other is to boosting the JPI strategy for climate change research, because we are collaborating with JPI Climate very closely. And the third one is to boost the less active member states from Europe. We don't say eastern or western side, but we said less active. And in this task, we will organize a regional workshop to engage people from region. And we will have workshop in Baltic region, we will have workshop in Moldova, in Georgia, and first one will be in Slovenia. That's why I would like to invite you all there. It's going to be in January 24th next year, and we will mainly tackle the barriers why the government is not so active in climate change strategy. What do we don't implement all the Paris Agreement and stuff, and we have a little bit more specific questions in this region. How to communicate with the government. You see that it's difficult to communicate with end users, but it's also very difficult to communicate with government, because every 4 years the government change, and they don't really see that the problems that are on climate change are so tickling there, because they will leave after 4 years. So how can we have a really good network, good structure that will work after the government change? And this will be the main topic of this workshop, and I'm really glad that I'm here, and I hope that we will see in Ljubljana to discuss a little bit more about that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Maybe one super short question? No? Okay, then the last hour, our last panelist is Goran. I know Goran for so many years, and we've done so many different things, official and unofficial projects in Serbia related to climate change, also with our staff from Climate Service and Climate Center. Actually, I work on university, but I really closely cooperate from people from Climate Service, which is great. So my question for Goran, because I know him for so many years, what is your opinion in terms when we talk about these climate service products, like different informations, maps, numbers, how much the situation is improved in last 15 or 20 years? I mean, we know what we have like in the beginning of 2000s, on the 21st century, or even in 90s, and the things how it looks like now. Can you give us your opinion from that side, from the side of providers, how that situation is changed?
The problem with exchanging information with the users is obvious in these things. in this topic of climate change. And in the beginning, we believed that some kind of national climate forum will much happen, which much contribute to reduce these misunderstandings. But also you can find some resilience into your organization. For example, someone mentioned about the quality of the seasonal forecast. And these, in our days, let's for mid-latitude, the value of this forecast is, let's say, below the 60%. If you're talking about the monthly forecast, this is the much more, 60–70%. And I think that most of the users are interested in the, let's say, this seasonal forecast or forecast 1 year in advance. And how to match these, let's say, still lower the value of the forecast and their demand. I want to say that even people from the Institute do not issue the forecast with our, let's say, seasonal forecast system. They are trying to do something, I don't know really what. And then the problem with the probabilistic type of forecast. Seasonal forecast and extended range forecast are probabilistic forecast. And the people from the insurance, from the, I don't know, agriculture, cannot understand easily this language. And really we need some places when we first explain them our products, how we can produce all of this information, how they can use those. And this I want to say we are at the starting point still here in Serbia.
Okay, thank you. I will close here because we have this climate snack. I would like to thank all of the panelists. I would like to, if you can give them applause. All of them was really great here. Also the audience was really great because we have a lot of questions, we have interactions, which is the main point of this kind of events. So right now we are closed. We are calling all of you to Climate Snack and upstairs. And after that we will continue. Alexandra have some more information for you.
Okay. Lunch will be on the attic upstairs. And those who have presentations after lunch, please come to me and we have to put it on the laptop. Jeanette, Jaroslav, Nadica. And